Hey there, it's Kate Swoboda, also known as Kate Courageous. I'm the creator of YourCourageousLife.com, the director of the Courageous Living Coach certification at TeamCLCC.com, and I'm the author of the book The Courage Habit, which is available at booksellers everywhere and, of course, at Amazon. I coach some pretty incredible women via the Sovereign Experience, which you can learn more about at YourCourageousLife.com. And as you might have guessed, I'm the host of this podcast, the Your Courageous Life podcast. We're going to talk about going after what you want and living a more courageous, emotionally resilient life. I might drop a couple of F-bombs, so don't listen with your kids in the back seat. And here we go. All right. Today we're talking about the fear of declaring your dream. One of my favorite questions to ask myself when I'm feeling really, really stuck, or to ask a client, but I use it a lot in my own life, that's for sure, is if I could have it any way that I want it, how would I want it? Because I think that there's this thing that we do where we get really stuck in what we think is realistic. We get really stuck in the container of our current experience. And it gets really hard to vision what's beyond our current experience when we get stuck in that container. It's like we go, oh, well, what is there on the horizon? And you look over and it's like, oh, that wall, not enough time, not enough money, not enough support, not enough knowledge, not enough youth, not enough age and wisdom, not enough, not enough, not enough, not enough. And of course, often when it's not enough, it's you're too much of this, you're too much of that, you're too much of that. You guys know how that goes. In my own life, the times when I have gone, well, wait a second, what if more is possible, have usually occurred either during a time of like being out of my element. So I've told the story on a number of interviews where I've been the person being interviewed. When people ask me about how I got started really looking at courage as a primary orientation, it really took off for me. It really clicked for me the summer that I went to Italy. And at the time that I went to Italy, I was not making a lot of money. I was only making like $30,000, $35,000 a year. And I was living in the San Francisco Bay Area where rent is like $1,000 a month at least. I mean, this is more than a decade ago. Rent is worse now. But at that time, that's how bad it was. And so, this $30,000, $35,000 a year that I was making, basically right off the top, around 12 grand a year was going to go towards rent. Not to mention all the other things you got to pay for just to live. So it was this kind of big thing when I realized I wanted to take a sabbatical from my job over the summer and actually spend a summer in Italy. And to be honest, I don't even remember anymore what in God's name gave me the chutzpah to think that I could do that. I don't remember, what I mean by that is I don't remember actually the moment when that idea connected and I decided to go after it. But what I do remember was being very, very afraid of all the things that could go wrong. I knew I wanted to go to Italy for the summer, but there were all these things that could go wrong, all these risks that I would be taking. So I save up money, scrounge around, take on odd jobs to even get a little extra money coming in. And I get to Italy and it was brilliant. It was wonderful. It was a time of intense creativity and really showing myself and seeing for myself what more was possible for my life. It was pretty blissful. I ate gelato every day. I did not gain a pound, if in case anyone's wondering, because I was doing so much walking in Italy, walking and looking at the beautiful architecture and just thinking to myself, oh my God, these are buildings that people saw in the Renaissance period, and walking into churches and feeling that holy quiet and hearing Italian, which is just, it's just such a beautiful language, all the things. So I had a great time. And one day I go onto Facebook and I post about that. I say I'm having such a great time. And in the universe's great gift to me, someone came along and said how not everybody can have that, not everybody can go off to Italy. And the reason I say it was a gift is because, of course, at first I found this annoying and very wet blankety, and why aren't you supportive? Why do you got to come in with that? But then it suddenly hit me that I actually happen to know something of this person's economic background and the support that she had in place, which included something that I did not have at that time, which was 3 weeks of paid vacation. I did not have 3 weeks of paid vacation in my life at that time. I had no job security. I was working on a contract basis where about every 6 months my contract would be renewed. And for the most part, you could count on your contract being renewed-ish, especially the longer you were there. But there was no absolute guarantee that if there was some kind of a budget cut or a funding issue that I wouldn't have been cut. And it was definitely a risk for me to take a sabbatical over the summer and not use that summer to earn more money. And the person who had made this comment made twice as much money as I did just on her own, plus was married to someone who I knew made quite a little chunk of change, plus lived in a less expensive part of the country than San Francisco, plus had that paid vacation. And what clicked for me in that moment was that everything that I had ever done in my life that had been worth doing had required courage. And that I had not ever brought that courage because I was somehow unafraid and certainly not enlightened. I had always done the courage thing while feeling fear. And this idea that you make friends with fear is certainly not my own. The Buddhists have been saying this for a very long time. I'm sure many different religious and psychological traditions have bandied about this idea. But the other thing to understand is that at the time that I made this connection, for the most part, what was around me in the self-help world was all, you got to slay your fear, F your fear, kick fear's ass, all that stuff. And the idea that I would feel my fear and it would be sort of more like a friend that accompanied me along the journey. And the idea even that I would want to befriend my fear felt really radical and was not something that was really being supported by the people around me. So during that period of going to Italy and making that connection for myself about what I really wanted for my life, a bunch of stuff started to open up, creative dreams, longings, all of these things. And with that, it becomes time to declare your desire, declare your dream. And that's what today's podcast is about what it's like to really declare your dream, to put it out there, to be really real about what it is that you want. And the first place that this requires courage is, of course, with yourself. And anybody who's listening to this and you're thinking, well, I've declared my dream before, it's not a problem for me to declare it to me. I can do it like in the little, hidey hole of my journal. I could get together with my blankets and my tea and I can, declare what I want in my journal and that's good. What's scary for me is putting it into action. What's scary for me is what comes next. Well, I'm going to have some help for you too, and that's going to span a couple of different podcast episodes. But I really actually would like you to consider that if you really feel like you rock out at declaring your dream to yourself, you already have the steps in you for what it's like to declare it to other people. So let's get really real here for a minute about the experience of declaring your dreams to yourself, what that process can bring up, how you make it through, and I think even people who feel like they're really good at declaring their dreams to themselves will be able to use that as a leverage point to take more action and declare their dreams to the rest of the world. So here we go. All right, declaring your dreams. I try not to speak in really heavy absolutes because I think most situations have at least a little bit, if not a lot, of nuance to them. But here's something I'll say just for the purposes of this episode that is an idea worth trying on that I've been trying to try on in my own life lately. And it is that if the dreams you are writing down when you are going, what is it that I really want? Here's my dream. When you are declaring your dream, if it feels easy, it's probably not big enough for you. And big is something of a placeholder word. It's a common word we use in our culture. What I mean is not so much big as in like an extroverted, very flashy, high visibility kind of dream. You don't have to go in that direction. When I say big, I mean the stuff that's a stretch. So if the biggest, boldest dream that you could bring into being for your marriage is that every week you are having the best orgasms of your life with your partner, if there's a part of you that would hesitate to write that down, like, oh my God, I mean, like, I don't even know. I mean, we've been together for so long. It's gotten complicated. I don't know. I don't want to talk about sex. Like, if that all starts to come up for you, it's a dream that is worthy of you. If writing a book is kind of like, yeah, someday I want to write a book. Okay, probably needs to stretch a little more. This year, I want to write a book that's going to deeply impact people's lives who have survived something that I too have survived. Oh, now if that starts getting you wiggly, I don't know. How would I ever find the time? It's just, I mean, like, and I mean, how many books already exist out there about people who have survived some kind of trauma? I mean, who am I to like write that in? Like, if all that starts coming up, it probably needs to go on your list. It's probably big enough for you. The stuff that gives you a little bit of a stomach flip is the stuff where we're getting into the vicinity of really declaring something that is truly a dream. And I don't really care what your dream is. I think you get multiple. I think you get as many as you want. I think that whatever your dreams are, that if they are parasitic dreams in any way, they will make that, you'll figure that out. So if there's any part of you that's like, I mean, I don't know, like I'll just go with like the most ego-based dream. Yeah. Oh, I just really, really, really want this like super fancy, super expensive house that in a like country club amazing neighborhood that has like, it's worth millions of dollars, da da da. Like somebody could look at that dream and they could go, all right, so what's going on here that you want something that has so many things that have status attached to them? And here's the thing. I think that if somebody wants a dream like that has a lot of status to it, and it's actually a parasitic dream, that the pursuit of it will dissolve them as the host of that dream, the attainment of it will only wear them down and will not truly lead to fulfillment, that's going to make itself known. It just will. So with declaring your dream, don't be afraid of exploring your edge. That's the big thing I'm trying to say. Don't be afraid of, let me back up a little bit. I try to be careful also about saying don't be afraid. When I say don't be afraid in this context, I don't literally mean turn it off like a switch. What I mean is I'm giving you that reassurance. I'm trying to give you that reassurance that whatever you think might be your dream, if the thing starts coming up in your head like, oh, it's just so superficial, I shouldn't want that, oh, it's not realistic, it's like, no, go ahead and stretch into that, because if it's actually superficial and won't add to your life, you're going to find that out. There's no way life isn't going to teach you that. And if it's not something that's currently realistic for you and it's a pretty big dream, well, man, time to create a new reality. Time to create a new definition of realistic, and maybe the attainment of the tangible thing or the physical thing won't even be what really means you've arrived at your dream, but really busting through this idea that there's a realistic way to dream is going to be the gift in all of this. I mean, you can't really dream big and be realistic at the same time. Not really, if we're going with the definition of the word. So with declaring your dream, and yeah, if you've already got a piece of paper and a pencil out and all that good stuff, rock on, grab one now, because that's what we're going into next. But as we go into that with declaring your dreams to yourself, are you getting just a little bit of a stomach flip? A little bit of an oh shit? A little bit of a like, I don't know about that. Because that means that you're stretching into something. And it's probably going to be a really good stretch. All right, let's get back to the actual act of declaring your dream. And this question, and it's one I love. If I could have it any way that I want it, how would I want it? If I could have it any way that I want it, how would I want it? If you are driving right now, I would suggest you pause this recording and you, as you're driving, just keep repeating that question in your head like a mantra. You gotta be safe while driving, right? Don't do anything dangerous while driving. Pull over if you need to. Use the voice memo on your phone and record your answer to that question, but pull over and be safe. If you are sitting at home or sitting somewhere where you can write or type or capture this in some way, pause this recording and write in big letters at the top of your paper, if I could have it any way that I want it, how would I want it? Take some time now to do that. And when you unpause this recording, I'm going to assume that you've taken time to answer that question. And I'm going to talk about some of the feelings that are likely to come up during that process for you, because I want you to know how normal they are. Go ahead and take a moment, pause. If I could have it any way that I want it, how would I want it? All right, I'm going to assume that you took some time to either think about or write down your answers to that question. And you can, again, have as many of them as you want. You could do one answer for every area of your life if you want to. You could focus on just one area. I've sat down before and gone, if I could have it in any way that I want it, how would I want it for my spiritual life, for my marriage, as a parent, physically, with my health, emotionally, with my business, with my money, with my career, with my friendships, my role in the world, giving something back. Those are so many categories, and you do get to declare them all, or if you want, you can focus on just one. It's up to you. If I'm listing any categories and you're realizing, oh, I didn't even think to say anything about that category, and I really want to get that one in there, I'm gonna go ahead, pause it now. Go ahead and give yourself that time, okay? And also, a quick note before we proceed. Check out what you wrote down and ask yourself, is there any part of you that maybe went, well, I answered this from a place of how would I want it given the current circumstances? That's important because it's a place where you might be reining yourself in through being realistic. And of course, pragmatism has a role here. Of course, there are constraints in absolutely everyone's lives. But for every constraint that you can find in someone's life, you can find an example of someone who's broken through that constraint as well. And why not you? Why not you as the person who figures out how to get what she wants or needs in this particular area? So if your answer to, if I could have it any way that I want it, how would I want it, was something like, my boss wouldn't be such a jerk to me. And you answered that question totally from the perspective of going, well, it's not like I'm ever going to get rid of this job. The best I can hope for is that my boss wouldn't be such a jerk to me. Pause this recording, go back, because you get to lean in even more beyond the dream of my boss might be kind of a jerk to me. And you get to hope for more. You get to declare and desire more. You get a bigger dream than that. So go ahead and pause the recording if you need to. Otherwise, keep listening. And we're going to dive into what this experience might have been like and some of the stomach flips that can come along the way. All right, I'm going to assume that you have in your possession or in your mental background some answers to, if I could have it any way that I want it, how would I want it? That busting through limitation, thinking outside the box. These are the big dreams. And oh my God. And so now let's talk a little bit about the stomach flip that can happen with declaring your dreams. And it is not going to be a one-stop shop, this discussion. This is a process. Everything that I do. If you've read my book, The Courage Habit, it's a process to practice courage. If you are planning to join the Sovereign Experience, which is my in-depth mastermind, we get into all this stuff. And the idea with the Sovereign Experience is that this stomach flipping stuff that happens when you declare your dreams is pretty quickly followed by, oh, hell yeah. Because you're emotionally sovereign and you know that you've got this. But here's what happens when you aren't feeling as emotionally sovereign, you aren't feeling as courageous, you aren't feeling as grounded. You're likely to have the inner critic come up and say one of a number of things. One, who do you think you are, or some variation of that. Usually the critic doesn't show up for me with the actual words, who do you think you are? Usually it shows up as, well, I don't know if that's really something for you. So it's like some variation of who do you think you are? This sort of predefined idea that you are just not the kind of person, the type of person, one of the people for whom this is possible. So that is your fear talking. You have a choice before you right now as you are declaring your dream. Who do you want to give your power to? Who do you want to give your attention to? Do you want to give your attention to the fear? Do you want to give your power to the fear? By attention, I mean the kind of attention that regards fear as an authority figure. It's good to give attention in the sense of noticing what fear says, but do you make it your king, your queen, your sovereign? Or are you sovereign unto yourself? Another thing that might have come up for you, I already mentioned it, the realistic, the reining it in through being realistic. Gotta be realistic. I don't know. Not enough time for all that. And now you have a choice before you. Again, do you want to fortify and strengthen that idea? How much time and attention do you want to give that strengthens that idea? Is it serving you? Is it in your best interests to strengthen that idea? Because I don't know about you, but every single time I think about not having enough of something and got to be realistic and reining it in, a little part of me just feels either sad, I guess you could say, disappointed by life, or kind of meh. Because I don't know about you, but I'm not here on this earth, on this very short life experience that I have, that you have, with blood coursing through my veins right now and a brain that is active and engaged. I mean, if I'm lucky enough to live to 100 and be connected and awake and not injured and not sick, to be healthy, to be vital, 100 years wouldn't be enough. It could never be enough. So why would I want to waste my time thinking about not enough time, not enough of this, not enough of that? Like, there are very real constraints in your life, in my life, in everybody's life. But the idea that I want to spend my time trying to figure out how to rein it all in and be realistic in face of those constraints seems like a waste, when I could be spending that time instead going, how can I transcend the restraints? That's what I want to offer to you about any place where you're trying to be realistic. You've got a finite number of years, months, weeks, days, hours, minutes. And by finite, I mean we all end up in the same place at the end of this. We all end up in the same place at the end of this. Everybody has an expiration date. So what do you want to do with your time? while you are here? Do you want to spend that time bemoaning what you don't have access to, what won't be possible for you because you don't have the access? Or do you want to spend your time doing whatever you can to give yourself access, to find the people who have got the access, and to create it for yourself? I am not, by the way, doing a whitewashing, over spiritualizing when I say that. It is a fact that there are people in our society all across the spectrum who have really serious systemic barriers. And one of the things that I take on in my own life is, how do I transcend any barriers that I think I have in my life? Because the more barriers I transcend, the more I'm able to bring others up with me. A rising tide lifts all boats. I'm not saying any of this from a perspective of, you take care of you first and someday you'll take care of others. I'm not saying like trickle down economics as applied to spirituality. I'm not saying, or personal growth. I'm not saying this is trickle down personal growth where, like, if you have all the wealth of the personal understanding, then it'll trickle down to others. So you just take care of you and it's all good. I am trusting, and if this doesn't apply to you, I am asking and requesting, and the world is asking you right now and requesting right now, that you are a stand right now, before you think you have it all figured out, for other people. That you are a stand right now before you have all the world's resources or all the knowledge or all the understanding, that you are trying to elevate the lives of others. I just also understand at the same time that you can't pull from an empty well. And that any place where I am under the knuckle of an internalized belief that I can't, or that something is not possible, or that there's no hope, or that it isn't realistic, that is going to hobble me in a wider arena as well. And that's part of why I'm trying to do this work. I'm trying to do this work of going, where do I limit myself? And where does that become a limiting belief about what's possible in the fields of justice and in transformation and in creating economic equality and parity and a level playing field for everyone and reparations of past harm? How do we do all that? Well, if I'm mentally blocked, then I'm not as much help to the collective. So the focus of today's episode is really on you declaring your individual dream, but I didn't want to miss this opportunity to say that what you do individually does have an impact on the collective. So here we are, you're declaring your dream. Another thing that might have happened for you as you started to declare your dream, your inner critic might have risen up so big and told you that you're a complete idiot. You know, if you've read The Courage Habit, you know that there's a process I engage with for working through fear. It's access the body, listen without attachment to what the critic says, reframe limiting stories, reach out and create community. So you listen to what it is that the critic is saying. You listen without attachment, without making it your sovereign, so that you stay emotionally sovereign, but you also reframe the limiting stories that it tells. And I got to tell you, if you do this work enough, you arrive at this really beautiful place where the critic is not constantly in your head telling you that you suck anymore. It's kind of nice. But here's what happens when you start to stretch into a new space that you haven't been in before. That's when your critic is like, oh, it's go time. I've been waiting for this. So, when I sit down and I write, and I'm guessing this happens for you too, if I could have it any way that I want it, how would I want it? That's the moment when your critic's like, all right, let me pull up my sleeves here. It's my time. I'm going to push everybody aside. I got this, everybody. God, what do you want that for? That's so dumb. Oh, you're such an idiot. That's such a stupid dream, please. That's so superficial. All you ever do is think about yourself. How's that dream going to help anybody else? As if you could do that. How many times have you ever stuck to something in the past? Come on. How many? Like 0? Sound familiar, anybody? Your critic will tell you that you have to do it perfectly if it's going to be done. Your critic will tell you that you are selfish to go after things that you want for yourself. Your critic will tell you, what's the point? It's not like you're ever going to get there. Somebody else has already done it, and they've done it better than you. Nobody wants what you have to say. Nobody cares what you think about that. Your critic will tell you that everything is possible only if you do it in this certain way. And sometimes your critic will get really sneaky, all self-sabotage style, and tell you if you do get out of the starting gate and start taking some action towards your dreams, they'll go, oh, it's okay, just relax. You got this. You've been doing a lot. Let's just take a break. And that is, of course, self-sabotage, because you cannot overspend just because you saved. You cannot blow off work just because you got ahead of your deadline. You can't make 2 steps forward and then go, oh, well, cool, it's all done. Like, there's actually a consistency that's required. So all of these different ways that the inner critic comes up when you declare your dream, let's talk about what to do with that, because that, to me, is the really tricky space. And you might have had some somatic stuff come up at the same time. For me, when I am declaring my answers to, if I could have it any way that I want it, how would I want it? The critic comes up, my chest gets tight. I actually start to feel a little bit like there's a pressure on my chest and it's a little harder to breathe. Makes me look down at my Fitbit and go, what's my resting heart rate right now? Because this is feeling pretty intense. And me, I do this courage, fear stuff all day long, every day. So you're normal if that stuff came up for you. Here you are. Got the dreams on paper. You might say that this is a reflection of your most courageous self. There are a bunch of worksheets that come with the Courage Habit book, and you can get them free, actually, if you become a subscriber at the Your Courageous Life library. Head on over to yourcourageouslife.com/begin, and you can join. And you can get access to the Courage Habit worksheets that come with the book. They obviously make more sense if you have the book, but you can do some of the worksheets on your own and get pretty far. And so here we are. You've been doing your responses to, if I could have it any way that I want it, how would I want it? And the stuff starts coming up. And particularly, I wanted to talk about this inner critic voice, what you do. Here's what I'm doing when this comes up for me. I'm trying to slow it down a little bit. So, Courage Habit, first part of the process, access the body. Deep breath. Take one now. Take a couple. Slow down, slow down, slow down, slow down. It's just words on paper. That's all it is. They can't hurt you. It's helpful to remember that. Tune into where your fear sensations are coming up in your body, if they're across your chest or the back of your neck or up in kind of a swirly, unfocused feeling in the front of your brain, or if they're behind your ears or if they're in your hands. And as you're accessing the body, maybe even amplify rather than try to shut down the sensation. So like if your hands are shaking, try to shake them harder. If your heart feels tight, try kind of curling up in a little ball and tightening your fists and tightening your heart, and then so like an expansion contraction kind of a thing. Whatever's trying to happen, instead of clamping down on it, amplify it, then relax it. Amplify it, then relax it. That can be really helpful. And then after you've accessed the body, go ahead and listen without attachment to what your critic is saying about these dreams that you've declared. And this is a little bit painful. The critic might be saying some things, as I mentioned, that are really unkind, that are mean. And as you're listening to the things that the critic is saying, if it feels like the words are coming at you too fast, a second step you could take around declaring your dreams would really be writing down each one individually and then writing down what the critic says. And again, in the Courage Habit the book, if you get the worksheets, there's a process where you actually can write down the individual things that your critic is saying. So you can take it one by one and really look at these fears one by one by one. So basically, you're taking them one at a time so that they're not coming at you so fast. And one at a time, again, if you have the Courage Habit book or if you have the worksheets, there's some structure to how this could look. But you're taking these one at a time and really looking at them and going, okay, I'm going to look at this. Some more somatic stuff might come up. You might feel that tension again. And if that does happen again, go back to accessing the body. Deep breath, right? Slow down, slow down, slow down. It's okay to slow down. You don't have to rush through this. Who says you have to rush through this, right? So you're looking at these things that the critic is saying to you one by one. And then you start to reframe the limiting story that you have around that. Whatever the limiting story is that you have around that particular item, you actually ask yourself again, okay, got it. That might be a limitation, but if I could have it any way that I want it, how would I want it? And you start going, okay, surely someone out there has figured out how to do this thing before. What did they do? How might I create that for myself in some small way? As an FYI, I've told the Italy story. I told it a while back, and one of the things that I did to fund part of my time in Italy when I was sitting down and I was going, if I could have it any way that I want it, how would I want it? Well, I want to go to Italy. I can't afford to go to Italy. How am I going to do this? Well, that was what got me down the road of thinking about the extra little side jobs that I could take on that might enable me to afford it. I wouldn't have thought of those if I had just been going, how can I do this? It also brought me to some pretty out-of-the-box thinking, like couch surfing, which is an actual thing that exists where you can sign up to couch surf at people's houses around the world and stay for free. And that also led me to the idea of pitching articles to a travel publication on what it's like to travel through Europe. And I did that, and I placed those articles. And then once I had placed those articles, I started reaching out to hotels and saying, do you have any media accommodations? I'm writing an article. I need to review some places because I'm traveling. And let me tell you something. I got to stay at some really amazing hotels, luxury hotels in Europe as a result of that. Like gorgeous, beautiful, like, hundreds of euros a night. There was one place I had an accommodation at that was 1,300 euros a night. I am not even kidding you. And I stayed there free. There was champagne waiting on ice when I arrived. It was crazy. $30,000 a year I was making at my salaried job. But this continual question of, if I could have it any way that I want it, how would I want it? Just kept leapfrogging me from one lily pad on the pond to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. And somehow I managed to create it. And this is the magic of going, I have this big dream and I want to lean into it. How can I create that? How can I create that? Surely there's someone somewhere. Why don't I start Googling? Why don't I start asking? Oh, because I had this idea, I had this idea. And then because I had that idea, I have this other idea. That's what can happen for you. But it all starts with the courage to declare your dream. You got to declare it. You got to want it badly enough to actually write down on a piece of paper, I think I'm a little bit crazy, but here's what I want. Or I'm worried that I'm too superficial, but here's what I want. Or. How do I create this? How do I make it happen? Surely, there's got to be a way to do this somehow. It all starts when you practice the courage to declare your dream. And that doesn't mean that you won't feel the fear along the way. It just means that you were willing to feel the fear along the way because it could lead to something bigger and bolder and better. All right, this has been a really fun podcast episode to record, and I can't wait to hear how you respond to it. I know that I've asked for this in a couple of other podcast episodes. But if you have a moment just to head over to iTunes and just hit a little 5-star rating, even if you don't have time to write anything. I mean, if you have time to write anything, I certainly appreciate that. But this is part of how other people can find this episode. It's part of how other people can also join us in the community, the world we're trying to create, where people go, yeah, I don't think it's crazy that I can live a beautiful life. I'm willing to stretch into that. So if you would take a moment to go wherever you can to rate this podcast so it can get more visibility. It's so appreciated. You can also learn more about getting into this really sovereign mindset that I'm talking about by heading over to yourcourageouslife.com, scroll down a bit, and you will find the Sovereign Experience. And you will learn all about what that Mastermind Intensive is about. We are starting in January. So it's both far away and yet also, whoa, really close. You can learn more about the Courageous Living Coach certification at teamclcc.com. And you can find me on social media everywhere as Kate Courageous. The only place I am a little bit different is on Facebook, where I am facebook.com/yourcourageouslife. As always, it's been such a pleasure to be here recording these episodes. I love hearing your feedback. And here's to you declaring your big, bold, courageous dreams.